Well, you know what they say. When one door is closed, another door is also still closed, because we haven't even opened the first door yet. And that poses a massive problem, because only after we open the first door, we can open the other door that then actually brings us into a room with even more doors. And as much as I do enjoy my first ever Dragon Slayer attempt here, I'm starting to have more and more questions. They are mostly related to the unreasonable high amount of passage access points, but whatever the game has in store for me next, I will also make like a door, and I'll be slamming it. Isn't she beautiful? And it's also been a while, as some of you never get tired of mentioning. But I think I have a solution now, and well, what am I even talking about? You know, as per usual, after I upload a video, I go through all the comments and then I see things like this. You are my most precious Roomba. The initial flight or fight response was definitely slightly swaying to the more aggressive approach, but more than anything, I was heavily confused. Until I then did something that I rarely do, I admit. I thought about it, and this makes so much sense actually. My approach to this task so far can pixel perfectly be described as a Roomba making his way through your living room. I am aware of the limited space. I know that there's barriers I cannot go through, but other than that, I'm just running around at seemingly random until I find something on the floor that I can scoop up. Absolutely incredible. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. Unsure if that really makes it better, because it doesn't. But what I was actually talking about, you know, like earlier, before all of that Roomba nonsense, is the fact that there is some detectives amongst you that in an incredible feat managed to realize that the uploads have definitely slowed down in the past few weeks. Incredible. Marvelous. Absolutely astonishing. So I thought to myself, maybe it is time to let you in on a little secret. I am actually well aware. Which kind of brings me to the conclusion of last video. The reason why I now cut the movie into separate pieces and now cut a separate piece into 2 episodes is really just my own frustration of not getting things done in time. Don't worry though, I have excuses. They just all suck. This is now where my great solution comes in. Because I have spent the last few days educating myself. See, that's good use of time already. And I have kind of disappeared in this rabbit hole of productivity videos on YouTube. And I am well aware of that irony. But this is the perfect opportunity for me to actually try these things out for real for once. All the while telling the tale of an absurd amount of doors. So let's go. The number 1 advice I've gotten from pretty much every single one of these quacks is something I was actually reasonably familiar with. Just write it down. Something I have in fact done a little bit ago when I was standing on this faithful mountain and I heard a beautiful poem for the first time. And I'm still amazed how RuneScape actually gets me to use a pen and paper still, again and again. Impressive. This time it was kind of a waste because the journal actually gives you the poem, but there have been other scenarios in the past. Be that as it may, the poem told me that I have to use a crustacean cage. And well, I have written it down, so I better do it, right? That's at least what I just learned. And you could have technically just seen that in the background, but my idea of using the cage is essentially catching fish with it. Or, well, more particularly in this case, lobster. But turns out there aren't any to catch here. And thus, officially starting the Roomba adventures. Because to this point, I have not once seen a place where one could catch lobster technically. I never carried the cages with me. I don't know if that's a requirement, but I am once again ready to randomly rumble across the world. So off I go. But I had for once a little bit of a plan. If it wasn't really obvious to this point, fine, I'll say it out loud. I am very lazy. If you combine that with my current task, the first thing that came to my mind is, hey, fish shops are selling fish. So why bother with figuring out where to even catch them when I can once again let the money do the trick and just buy them. And given a slight state of desperation, still massive amounts of confusion, but I think most importantly because I really wanted it to be true, I came across this sign of the RuneScape gods. There is literally the one item I am looking for lying on the ground. This just had to be it. And I've had smaller successes in the past that I've been way more suspicious about. Truth be told, there was a certain paranoia going on because why would suddenly there be exactly the thing I was looking for? Is someone following me? And how do they even know what I'm looking for? But I have also learned to not ask too many questions, and I simply moved on with my original idea actually, and got myself some raw lobster as well, which was pretty much the moment where I now realize that it could technically be either of those, and that it is out of stock and I can't even buy it. Well, that's no good, because as much as I have now probably been served the answer on the streets, there's still the chance for my original plan to be correct, and I need to use the cage for that one. So we are back in Roomba mode, because I still have no idea where to get lobster from, unless that it is definitely not here. So I went back to my other massive passion nowadays, cartography. But I reasonably quickly realized, and I don't want to brag here, but I have been to every single fishing spot there is, and lobster was never any of those. Which I guess brings us back to a full circle of laziness. Because you see, I have a lobster in my inventory, I technically made progress, and that was enough for me. And I had no desire on figuring out whether I was right or wrong with my other approach at all, especially after realizing that there is still no lobster in stock. So the only logical thing to do, at least out of my point of view, is coming back here and pretty much just throw everything from my inventory at the door. The bucket of water was my attempt of a bowl that hasn't seen heat, but more on that later. That was just one of these Hail Mary attempts, but also perfectly summarizes my current approach, where even the slightest chance of success beats actually figuring this out and working for the answer by so much. You have no idea. So eventually it happens to happen that I tried the lobster and surprisingly nothing happens. That happens a lot actually. But then here's the thing with laziness. I've now come all this way. I studied my books again. I examined. I delved deeper and came to the conclusion that simply continuously clicking everything I had with me, once again, the smallest odds of doing pretty much nothing still beats the high odds of actually working. And so it eventually also had to happen that I simply used the crustacean cage on the fucking door. Of course. And just like that, it was gone. And as it always is with these puzzles, in hindsight, it was very obvious, wasn't it? But that is easy to say now, of course, as the first riddle pretty much was just hinting at what we need, while this one was actually just literally the thing. And what makes it worse, I guess, the fact that I've been carrying this thing for quite a while with me. Regardless, 2 down, 2 more to go. And one thing is for sure now, I have pretty much empirically proven that laziness beats productivity in any way possible. YouTube guru 0, Bad Sib is 1. As accidentally stumbling upon the right answer once again is more than enough for my ego to run rampant, and really all the proof that I need. You know, as they say, never change a running system. So why strategically work your way to an answer when you can just randomly find it in the wild? Which brings us to the next question. Where in the wild do we find a bowl that hasn't seen heat? Well, or a worm string changed to sheet, as I am kind of doing everything at once now, because I don't know the answer for either of those. But as per usual, he has a plan. The plan pretty much focused on the bowl, because while I was doing that, I hoped to accidentally come across something that makes any sense when it comes to the worm. Problem might be that that in itself already makes no sense, but that's kind of the approach here, isn't it? So let me give you a little sneak peek into the masterful plan my mind came up with, so that the slight inaccuracy in my ways makes a little bit more sense to you. We are looking for a bowl. So far so good, but the bowl hasn't seen heat. Surprisingly, the first connotation I made for some reason took a very sexual turn. But I'm almost certain, not entirely, but a bowl doesn't have to be in heat so that a baby bowl is born. And that's pretty much Exhibit A, why I'm struggling with this quest so much. I constantly come up with absolute unnecessary nonsense, but it's entertaining, at least for me. And while we're here, maybe this is the sheep we're looking for. Maybe this is the sheet we're looking for. And I'm not kidding when I say that my justification for this to be correct was, the picture here looks kinda like a worm. As for all the bowl variations, my understanding of hasn't seen heat was directed to the ingredients of the bowl, or the ones that you would put inside of it naturally. So I am now carrying around a bunch of bowls that you can put cold things into. And that was also the approach of the water bucket I had with me earlier. And once again, while we're here, I followed through on a little bit of a different worm string approach. It is a string, kinda looks like a worm, and you can turn it into sheet. I even brought the corresponding sheet I was talking about with me, just to make sure, of course. But I have so many correct answers in my inventory already, I only need 2, so why am I even bothering? So naturally, there is only one thing to do. That obviously being walking all the way back to our beloved door, insert some items, and then slay a dragon. Well, that is if any of those items would have actually been correct. And as much as I always try to bring out the contrast of me having no clue whatsoever with absolute arrogance in my narration, surprisingly a part of me genuinely thought that any of those had to be correct. But the game humbled me once again, which begs the question, why does that still have to happen? But a more important question possibly, what exactly could the answer to those 2 riddles be? As I am at the same place as I was just a bit ago, but I'm actually worse off now, because I've now ran out of ideas. But as we now also know, it's exactly this moment where I excel, because there is only one possible thing to do right now. So I went straight back to Roomba. And I'm kinda excited, because at this point in time I had no idea what the answer was going to be, and I was actually very eager to find out. So I once again Roomba'd across the map, I Roomba'd through cities, I Roomba'd into buildings to finally find an answer to which of these looks the most like a worm. And string. Well, back to cartography, of course. And then I, for the 500th time, of course, Roomba'd through the profession diary. And somehow, the more you look at it, the less it changes. It's a fascinating concept and very time consuming, as you can see in the background. For almost 4 minutes I checked every single item inside of it. So if any of you ever have a question, I now know the answer. Well, as per usual, just wanted to say that again, in case some of you forgot. For the 50th time I Roomba'd across the quest text again. Also not changing, surprisingly. I somehow ended up at the barber's, gave my cake business a cake? What? Okay, I'll leave that in for you guys. This is how fried my brain is with all of this. Cape business. Visited a very old friend. Unsure why I did that because, well, we've been over this like about a year ago. All of this is still not his problem, but while I'm here, quick check-in with my cabin boy, and given my excellent planning and me bringing planks and nails, I might as well seal that hole shut. That is if I would have excellently brought 30 nails instead of 15, which once again proves this game is purely designed just to fuck with you. Thanks to my mining session, I still have a steel bar, still have a hammer, and now have 30 steel nails. I am once again exhilarated, just in case you can't tell. But if you actually bring the correct amount of items, things suddenly start working in this game. That is until you find out that you need all 3 planks, but 30 nails is required for a single plank. Now isn't that exciting? Which once again proves this game is purely designed just to fuck with you. So we get more bars, hammer more nails, and seal more holes. And despite the game's best efforts, I get it done. And now actually am a boat owner. Well, at least we got that ticked off the bucket list. Ned still doesn't want to be my captain. Well, fair enough. But you know, while I'm here, what if this is the worm string we've been looking for all this time? Just to be safe, I bring a rope on my adventures now. It has versatile usage after all. But surprisingly, that was not the answer. Way more shocking though, the cape wasn't correct either, despite it being a sheet. But to be honest, if that would have been the answer all along, I wouldn't really know what to believe then. Would kind of explain the high price though. So all of that pretty much ends Roomba run number 1, with yet another massive amount of negative progress, which in this case is technically good because there is a finite amount of items that I can throw into this door, and one just has to be the correct one eventually. And with how things are going right now, we might be doing that very soon. I double checked once again, so I guess triple checked every single item I have in my bank, as we've made some surprise discoveries in here before. Not this time around though, at least as far as I can tell. To be honest, at this point I don't even know what's in here anymore. But my next cartography session unraveled something I haven't come across so far. Mostly because I haven't been actively looking for it. But now that my problem has changed, so did my approach. Because a silk trader is exactly what we're looking for. Silk is made out of a string that comes out of a worm. Guess school wasn't useless after all, despite this game making it very clear that dropping out was pretty much inevitable, wasn't it? But cause and effect of all of that made me actually pick up this game initially, click the wrong trader first, but finally I buy a worm string changed to sheet. I mean, technically I didn't know at the time for sure, but this again was one of these moments where I just knew. Or worded slightly different, if that wasn't the answer, then, you know, I might as well just quit right here. But this time the door accepted my offering, as they say. Happy door, happy life. And I'm also happy to announce that a kebab is not a bowl that hasn't seen heat. And you can kind of see me pivoting into the I just use every single item on this door approach already. But despite my best efforts, I am yet looking for a bowl. But not just any bowl. It hasn't seen heat yet, which I don't know what that means. Other than only one thing. It is back to the Roomba. Which is still the same old. I just randomly do the things that I have been doing in the past hours. I read the quest text. Look at the beautiful map. Profession diary. I'm even as desperate as talking to people. Well, only in-game though, so don't worry. Still counts though. More cartography. Then I somehow ended up here. I don't even remember why. I was again seeking for spiritual help, which I did not receive. And after learning that you need a chef's hat to enter, I thought the answer had to be in the cooking guild. I mean, who else knows more about bowls than those guys? Very careful with that sentence and how you pronounce it. Also, I want to mention my massive restraint on not making ball jokes left and right. As you know, bowls and balls and heat, not finding. Yeah, I guess technically I am making balls jokes now. And other than stealing all of their stuff, I didn't find anything in here. And I have reached a point where I passed this crossroads without taking care of my cake business. Didn't stop me from venting my frustration in another way though. But all in all, I have kind of reached the end. Maybe that is a late response to pretty much just doing absolutely nothing for hours on end because you don't really know what to do. Or it might also be very possible that I have exhausted every single possible scenario that could get me to the answer. So I for once did the reasonable thing. Just as the game already mentions, possibly taking a break, I again try all sorts of items and all sorts of bowls on the door. Given my lack of success, there was only one option though. We do quit the game, obviously for now. Because the game doesn't quit you, actually. And while I was out there experiencing and adventuring the real world, I was subconsciously and also consciously working on this particular in-game problem. I did it at home, I did it while grocery shopping, and I even did it while at work. And the latter was actually where it hit me. I have exhausted everything that I know of. But that was the problem. The answer could only be something I haven't done yet. And if we take this approach to a bowl that hasn't seen heat, we once again, in hindsight, figure out that the answer was very obvious all along. And I once again technically know what to do, but I've never done it myself, so we gotta get going. First, we gotta hit the bank for some leftover soft clay I had lying around. Actually, make that a pickaxe as well. We are then mining some clay because I actually figured out where to find this by now. The things you can achieve when you're not just blindly walking through this world for once. Regardless, clay was just to make sure because, again, I haven't done this yet, but I'm fairly certain the soft clay is what we need. So we use the soft clay with the pottery wheel, and I'm now given this option where one of them is to make a bowl. So we are obviously doing that, and even the game calls it an unfired bowl. And to actually make a bowl out of this, something I would know if I would have ever attended a pottery class IRL, I guess, one would have to add fire. And fire produces heat usually. So if you possess a bold tongue, you might actually say that the bowl in my inventory hasn't seen heat yet. But that is merely a personal theory, because deep down I still think the right answer all along was the kebab. But the sad thing is we will never know, because as I told you a little earlier, if one door is closed, the other door is also still closed. But that doesn't apply anymore, because if you open the first door, you will also be opening the second door.